What's up, Eagles Nation? What's going on, NFL world? How you doing, Division Rivals? This is Stephen Hyder, Skate City Sports Channel. Sports Channel where the cerebral NFL fan comes for about 10 minutes of daily content. All right, guys, today's topic, we're going to talk about the formation of this practice squad and some things around the way the Eagles have shaped this roster, which are unique. And I want to start there with how the Eagles have shaped the roster, right? We heard in the press conference from Sirianni and Roseman after the setting of the 53-man roster. We heard how he talked about they really don't view it as a 53. They view it as a 70. You guys might be doing some math going, gated. That doesn't even make sense, bro. It's 53 plus 16 is 69. The Eagles use that one international player designation thing that you can use like on a guy like Matt Leo, so it gives them a 70-man roster, guys. That's how they're coming up with the math. But I want to talk a little bit about the way that this roster is constructed before I get into the practice squad and how it was set, guys. So to begin with, there was a great article on PhiladelphiaEagles.com by Dave Spadaro, to where I thought he pointed out a couple of really unique things about this Eagles roster. And to begin with, it's just the youth movement on this roster. This is definitely called a rebuild, called a retool, however you want to, it's a term, guys. I don't care what term you use. But there were 9 rookies on this team right now between drafted players and undrafted rookie free agents, guys. So, I mean, that's a pretty high quantity number of guys in that realm, right? In addition to those 9 players, there's 2 more players that would be designated as a year 1 player because they haven't accumulated any game action in the NFL. And that has to do with Aaron Sipos, our punter, and then also Tyree Jackson. So that's 11 guys right there that are basically, all intents and purposes, they're rookies. And then he went on to kind of highlight that of the 53 guys on the active 53, 33 of these players, so 33 out of 53 of these players have been signed since 2019. It's a different way of rebuilding, guys. I mean, definitely from what we've seen from the regime prior. Because when Doug Peterson came in, guys, there were 3 waiver wire claims made by the Eagles that season. So we see already kind of a little bit of a different approach and philosophy here to roster construction underneath Nick Sirianni in this front office this time around. So there's definitely a little bit of a, more of a turning over of the roster, if you will, as we can see here. But all right, guys, let's get into the players that made the practice squad, and let's talk a little bit about what happened, right? So to begin with, guys, I always like to look at the linemen first and see how they shape the practice squad players on the lines. So let's start offensively. And the first thing I'll point out, guys, just about overall construction of the practice squad is there's a little bit of an equitable sharing. I talked about this in my other videos where they put 8 offensive guys, 8 defensive guys, and we still do have 1 active spot remaining in terms of the practice squad that we can assign somebody. So we'll have to see how that kind of works out. But offensive linemen, guys, the big uglies, as I like to call them. Coyote Owasika, who's a player you guys know I'm really high on. He was a tackle out of Buffalo. He's got a little bit of that guard tackle flexibility. I like this young man a lot. I think he's going to be something worth developing. So, I mean, I was pretty excited to see that he made it through and made it to there because you got to be careful with linemen, guys. A lot of times people overhype who will get claimed, but the one group without fault that will get claimed on you, and you have to be careful, is offensive line and defensive line. You have to be very careful waiving young players at those 2 positions because they can get claimed. It happens a lot. You guys remember Brett Toth, and then, of course, last year the young pass rusher we had out of Stanford got claimed by the Washington football team. So we know that these things, Toth got claimed a couple years ago by Arizona, so we know these things happen. All right, the next guy is a younger player, but a guy who's got a little bit of NFL experience. He's a guard tackle combo as well. That's LaRaven Clark. He got, picked up. Next guy up on that list, guys, is Sua Opeta. Is a guy who's been around the organization for a little while. We signed him a few years ago as an undrafted rookie free agent. I think Sua Opeta is a decent backup left guard. I think the reason he ends up on the practice squad is something I've been saying back and forth in the comments with a few of you guys. He just didn't have versatility. Jeff Stoutland really likes Sua Opeta a lot, but at the same time, Jeff Stoutland likes his reserve linemen to have a certain athletic ability and there's certain characteristics he looks for. And one of those things is that you have to have some versatility. And since we're already carrying a guy like Andre Dillard, who really, at this point, probably doesn't offer you that versatility, or at least it's unknown at the best. It's unknown if he could be a guard tackle on the left side or a swing tackle between the left and the right. Those things are difficult to do, man. They're easy for a guy like me to talk about. It's a lot harder for a player to go actually accomplish and achieve that. But they look for that. You can look and see Jack Driscoll, guard tackle swing, right? You look at Brett Toth, guard tackle swing, right? You look into the interior linemen there, right? Nate Herbig, guard center flexibility, right? We look at Landon Dickerson, our 2nd round pick, guard center versatility. You can see how Stoutland likes to utilize those backup positions. So that's why a guy like Sua Peta, who's probably one of the 53 better players on the roster, ends up on the practice squad, in my opinion. On the topic of having guard center flexibility, the next player that was carried over to the practice squad was Rosh Pierscher Bocker. That's a whole way of saying something. Bocker was signed off of Washington's practice squad, I think, last year. He's a guy that can play, guys. Guard center guy. I mean, he's got some versatility. I think he's played a couple of games in the league, if I'm not mistaken. But he's not. This is still very much a young guy. All right. Then we get into some of the more known names, guys. The names that have been around Philadelphia for the past couple of years and very popular talk. All right. So number one is Jordan Howard, guys. I got a little concerned with Jordan Howard, guys. I won't say I was completely blindsided by him being cut. I knew there was a possibility because he's a vested veteran. But the reason I didn't really talk about Jordan Howard in the estimations of vested veterans is it just didn't he didn't count that much money against the roster. And I feel like this team's going to play a lot of two-back sets. And then also when you look at a guy like Jordan Howard, I think he's your closer. This is the guy when you have, double-digit leads, over 10 points, and you're trying to close a game out, and you need to run the ball, and you don't want to expose your quarterback to injury. You don't want to expose your starting running backs to injury. Jordan Howard comes in and closes the game out for you. He's a guy that can get you those goal line reps. He's a guy that can get you those short down distance reps, right? He's a guy that's very good in pass pro, one of the best in the NFL in pass pro. I thought Jordan Howard clearly had a role in the football team, and I still think he does. If you ask me, and I've said it before, guys, why did they put him on the practice squad? Well, I think number one, you got to give them credit that the league didn't want Jordan Howard. The Eagles were really the only suitor. So I think they felt confident they could get him through to the practice squad. But number two, you need guys like Jordan Howard you can talk to and make a side deal with to maybe get guys on your active 53 to then designate as injured reserve. So think about your Tyree Jacksons and your Davion Taylor, because if you put those guys on the PUP or the IR following the, initial 53, those aren't season-ending injuries per se, right? Those can then be 6 to 8 week things. Whereas you do it before you set the 53, so before the league, before that designated date of the 31st, guys, then you're done. Like if you set that date and you do that action's in concrete, they're out for the year. So you got to be careful, how you do that. And I think a guy like Jordan Howard allows you to be able to do that, and then potentially calling back up or just say like we feel like no one's going to really claim him, and we can just pay him a lot of money on the practice squad. We can pay him pretty close to what he was going to get paid anyways, and just say, hey man, you're basically on the roster. We're going to keep calling you up. So I think you can do things like that, guys, and I think that's what happened with Jordan Howard personally. Jason Huntley was retained on the practice squad as a kick returner, guy that gives you a lot of same versatility as guys like Miles Sanders and, a lot of the other guys on this team, right? Kenneth Gainwell, Boston Scott. He's kind of a similar type back there, guys. So, I mean, he's still on the roster. I think it was a good claim or a good way of bringing him back. I like Huntley a lot. I think Huntley's got talent. And then we kept 2 wide receivers. I really think we're in a good place at the wide receiver position when you look at it from the 5 actives to the 2 practice squad guys. I mean, look, it turned out okay. I mean, John Hightower and Travis Fulgham passed through waivers, and they've resorted back to the practice squad. I will say that in a year where there's probably not as many guys being exposed to the waiver wire at wide receiver, that's probably a more risky move for the Eagles to make with Hightower or Fulgham. I do think both of those guys, you had to worry a little bit about them being claimed, right? I mean, claims are still fairly rare except for linemen. But you look at a guy like John Hightower, he does have a deep vertical threat and he can be a kickoff returner. I can see a team looking at him and say he could definitely be our 5th or 6th receiver. Travis Fulgham flashed in those games, guys, and he got noticed around the league. So he also has that reputation, though, what happened in Green Bay and Detroit and how that kind of fizzled and burnt out. And then they see what's going on in Philadelphia. Maybe that scared enough teams off of him. There's some maturity issues with Fulgham. It's not a talent issue. So having these guys clear through and get to the practice squad is not a bad thing at all, guys. Like that's good to be able to still retain them, at least temporarily. I mean, someone might claim them off your practice squad later in the season and put them on the active roster. Like that's always a possibility, guys. I'm not going to bullcrap you on stuff like that. All right, defensively, let's talk about the guys that are here. All right, let's go defensive line first, guys. And Rayquan Williams is here. Matt Leo is here. And Marvin Wilson is here. The only guy that we signed outside of anyone that played within the Philadelphia Eagles camp here is Marvin Wilson, which I think was a really good signing. He's a defensive tackle from Florida State. I think there's a lot of upside to Marvin Wilson. I actually really like that signing a lot, guys. Rayquan Williams is another one of these 3-tech guys that he gives you a little versatility for the nose, but he's more of a 3-tech. I like Rayquan Williams. I'm glad to see him back. I mean, I don't know if he's really going to ever crack the lineup per se, but I like the idea of bringing him back, letting him develop for another year, and then bringing him back for a true competition that last year. Matt Leo, he's the international designation player that we used. All right, linebackers, guys. Jacoby Stevens is the only, he's kind of that rover, what they call a rover, which is a hybrid linebacker safety that we kept on the roster. Jacoby Stevens coming out of LSU. He's a guy that's been in a good system with adequate coaching. I think injuries maybe derailed his chances a little bit, but we cleared him through and he got him to the practice squad. So overall, good job here. Safeties. We kept 2 safeties. Elijah Raleigh, Graylin Arnold, guys. Elijah Raleigh, look, I thought he was a guy that I thought he was going to make the roster personally. I think Elijah Raleigh and Graylin Arnold are going to see action early in the year. We don't know the health of Kavon Wallace. We don't know the health of Rodney McLeod fully. I think Rodney McLeod's going to be ready to go week 1, but I don't know. And Kavon Wallace is coming back from 2 groin injuries now. So there's a really good chance that guys like Elijah Raleigh and Graylin Arnold see early season action until those guys come back around and fully healthy. So I would expect that those are 2 guys that could potentially be called up. Because remember, when you go to your active game day roster, it's no longer 46, it's 48, because you can call 2 players from the practice squad to the active roster. So I wouldn't be shocked to see Elijah Raleigh get those early games, first couple weeks call-ups there. And then corners, we kept 2 guys. We kept Michael Jacquette and Craig James, right? Craig James is a special teams ace. He's a guy that can play inside, outside. And then Michael Jacquette's more of the developmental piece. I told you guys, I really like Michael Jacquette a lot. I do. But this kid needs development. He's not ready for an NFL field quite yet. But they kept him around there just because he's got the length. He's got everything you kind of look for in a corner. Technique's got to get put down, guys. He's not technically sound yet. And you can see that at times where he's getting beat. Past that, guys, there's one other aspect I wanted to talk about when it comes to Jordan Howard. I want to go back and visit this topic to close out the video about Jordan Howard. I want to be open and honest here. I got a little concerned with Jordan Howard for a couple of things, right? After I saw they waived him, I kind of looked through the waiver wire and I started noticing that guys like Deontay Foreman got waived and Bo Scarborough got waived. Those are 2 bigger backs that could give you that short yardage, kind of close the game out. I don't think either one of those guys are quite as good in pass pro as Jordan Howard, but they're bigger backs. They can serve a lot of the same roles, okay? The one player that absolutely concerned me, okay, when I saw the waiver wire, and I thought this was foolish of Pittsburgh to even expose this kid to the waiver wire, because personally, I would have claimed him. Or if he cleared waivers, I would have been in his agent's ear saying, look, I don't know what Pittsburgh's trying to pay him. We'll pay more. Get him here. Because he's so perfect for the role, guys. And it concerns me about Jordan Howard because I generally like Jordan Howard a lot, but this is a young player who gives you all the same versatility as Jordan Howard, but he can catch the football far better than Jordan Howard can. He's one of the better receiving backs in the league. That was Jalen Samuels, former NC State product. This is a very much like a Trey Burton type player, guys. NC State, he played that kind of weird flex H-back. It's kind of like a weird running back / tight end type role there. He's a really good receiving back, guys. He can run between the tackles. He's dang good in pass pro. For the role, when you're talking about closing out games and having a guy that can be physical and run between the tackles, and then talking about short yardage and goal line situations and giving you the versatility to not only be good in pass pro, but catch the ball, Jalen Samuels really fits in that role, right? I don't think he's ever going to be like a starting caliber running back in the NFL, but when you look at that role in particular, Jalen Samuels is exactly the type of player you look for, right? He's not quite so like Gibson's talent level at Washington, where it's a starting caliber back. He's a step below that, but he gives you a lot of that same type of ability there. So, I mean, I was kind of shocked there, man, because I would have gone after Jalen Samuels pretty hard because he fit the role so perfectly. But I do think Jordan Howard is ultimately going to be the guy that serves that role in Philadelphia's offense. All right, guys, as you may have noticed, we do still have one roster spot available for the practice squad because Matt Leo is the international designation, so we still actually have one more spot. So let me know your thoughts down below, guys. Who do you think the Eagles might claim? Let me know, guys. Who do you think might be that guy that gets there? What do you think is going to happen with this roster? Like, do you think any of these guys are going to get called up to the active roster once you put a couple of these guys onto the IR, like Tyree Jackson or Pup? Like Tyree Jackson and Davion Taylor, could you see like a Jacoby Stevens getting elevated up to the active roster? Or could you see like a Elijah Raleigh getting moved up to the active roster once they clear those guys to IR? How about a guy like Jordan Howard gets moved up? You know what I mean? Like, what do you guys think, guys? What are your thoughts on that? All right, y'all. I appreciate y'all's time and attention. I'll see you guys on the next video.